Shabbat Shalom. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another Shabbat lesson. But before I get started, as always, I'm going to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rekah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well, and whom I learned this truth from. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. Shabbat Shalom. And I'm going to start it off in Isaiah chapter 32, verse 9. Rise up, ye women that are at ease. Hear my voice, ye careless daughters. Give ear unto my speech. Many days and years shall ye be troubled, ye careless women, for the vintage shall fail, the gathering shall not come. And this precept is talking about how you women, specifically you women of the tribes, you so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American women, the daughters of Israel, and even these other women out here, especially these westernized women, are about to go through holy hell during Jacob's trouble. And you're going to be getting snatched up, raped, killed, beaten, uh, eaten, because cannibalism's coming back in a big way, etc., etc. And the Most High has kept an eye on the wickedness you women have been committing in this society, making just using men out here as playthings and toys. You got one dude to blow your back out, the other guy to pay the light bills, who's not getting any box, the simp, just doing that, committing adultery out here, putting men on child support, making false grape accusations, feeding off the system, walking out around here prideful like you're just better than men, even though you've been ran through by, hey, more men than you can count on both hands, etc., etc. As it says, for the vintage shall fail, the gathering shall not come. We're coming into the times to where you won't be able to call 911 for help. You won't be getting government assistance, SNAP, Section 8, all these lucrative jobs you have. You're going to lose those jobs, and you're just going to be asked out here. And since you've screwed over so many men, and you won't have anybody to call upon in that day, you're truly going to see just how alone you are. And if you're really a bad bitch, a boss bitch, I don't need no man. I can do bad all by myself. And even now, leading up to Jacob's trouble, we're seeing a lot more instances of acts of violence committed towards these women because we're in the beginning stages of this society becoming completely lawless and the vintage failing. As we've seen over these past couple of years, especially in the, what's that word? In the aftermath of the George Floyd's death, you had the George Floyd protests and calls for defunding the police, and a lot of police departments have been defunded, and a lot of police have just been leaving the force in general due to them receiving negative support from the communities, and a lot of them not wanting to go along with the C-19 dictates and receive that jab, especially down here in New Orleans. They're having a hard time keeping police on the force and getting new recruits into the academy. And with the already small number of recruits they have getting in there, a lot of them burn out and drop out before they even pass the academy and become police officers. And like I always bring up with the Newsbreak app, every day you're seeing instances of carjackings, murders, robberies, and instances of rape down here have been rising as well, which inspired me to do this Shabbat lesson because just a couple of days ago in the area around where I live, there was an attempted raping of a woman down here. And then besides that, on around Loyola College, which is a big university down here, you had two different instances of women whom I'm assuming were college students getting raped. And then on Bourbon Street, there was a woman that got raped on Bourbon Street. She got taken by somebody, and there was literally a block over a police officer on duty though he was on duty for a movie set, so that's where his priorities were. But somebody who saw the woman getting ravished went to the police officer and asked for help, and he didn't do anything about it. Hey, just an instance of the vintage failing and the terrible times coming to you women, though we're already in the beginning stages of these things coming to you women. And again, it's only going to get worse from here on out. As myself and many brothers have brought up before, up in Illinois, around January 1st or January 3rd of next year, due to them restructuring how their cash bail system works up there, a lot of major crimes are going to be decriminalized, and those that are in jail for those crimes are going to be let go. And if anybody gets caught in that act committing these crimes, hey, the police aren't going to do anything about it. And it includes second-degree murder, kidnapping, and shit. If somebody kidnaps a woman, what do you think they're going to do to them? Why'd they kidnap them in the first place? Burglary, threats towards political figures, etc., etc. So again, just another example of the vintage quickly failing for you women out here. And you women definitely are careless and at ease. This whole feminist-minded, woman-worshipping city, which the word metropolis means city of the women, it has made you women careless and at ease out here. You can call Uber Eats to get what you want to eat. You can get one of your beta male providers who you ain't giving any box to. You can call him up to come bring you some food or whatever. You can use these government assisted benefits. You can have children without repercussions and just put men on child support. You got these lucrative jobs out here. Hey, you're just winning right now, admittedly. But again, this society, this westernized society, especially the United States of America, is collapsing on all levels. So soon, you're just going to have to get it how you live out here. And through all the fuckery you've been committing, hey, the getting's not going to be good. Verse 11, tremble ye women that are at ease. Be troubled, ye careless ones. Strip you and make you bare, and gird sackcloth upon your loins. Hey, being in a state of mourning because all these horrible things that are happening out here. They shall lament for the teats, for the pleasant fields, for the fruitful vine. Section 8, SNAP, 911, these lucrative jobs they've got, which are no longer going to be around. But without further ado, let's get into an article just showing how the vintage is failing for you women right before our very eyes. This is on LoyolaMaroon.com, and the title of the article reads, Loyola victim speaks out after NOPD lacks urgency in responses. It was October of 2019. A former Loyola student was out with her friends at a Halloween party when someone approached her and offered her a drink. And since you women are careless and at ease out here, you take everything as a joke. You're not circumspect out here. You think it's all just about the feels and the good vibes, and that nothing bad can happen to you until something bad does happen to you. She accepted it and woke up on the party's filthy bathroom floor 2 hours later to the sound of her friends pounding on the door and finally barging in. She'd been graped and needed to act fast. She removed her underwear and placed them in a bag as evidence. She climbed into a friend's car and drove to the hospital, ready to talk to the New Orleans Police Department about everything she didn't even remember. Like I just said, they're having an issue keeping police on the force down here and getting new recruits through the academy. And this event took place in 2019, so a couple of years ago, and the situation has progressively gotten worse since then. So instances like this are going to continue and only get worse. It's been 3 years and she hasn't heard from law enforcement since. Hey, the vintage failing. They say that murder takes your life, but grape takes your soul and leaves you alive, the former Loyola student and sexual assault victim said. The New Orleans Police Department has attempted to fight its dwindling number of officers by acquiring additional allocations employing civilians, and ultimately downgrading some grape cases to non-emergencies. Point blank period. The vintage, that fruitful vine, all this assistance you women get in society literally collapsing right before our very eyes. Something like grape is considered a very serious offense in this society, but due to manpower shortages and just the state of things, they've downgraded some of them to non-emergencies. And this was about 10 years ago, maybe even less, that a mutual acquaintance of a friend of mine, I was over at their house for a party, and they were recounting about how a female friend of theirs was working on a community project, building houses down here, and somebody graped her on the premises, and she called the police, and then they didn't arrive till 3 hours later, and they never caught her grape artist, and that was damn near 10 years ago. This instance was damn near 3 years ago. So how much worse do you think this situation is and is going to continue to be now, considering the state of things? It's getting so bad that the NOPD is having to employ civilians down here. And just recently, there was a civilian working for the police who went with a landlord in the east of New Orleans to go issue, I think, what's that word? Issue an eviction notice. And when they went to issue the eviction notice, that person shot at the landlord and the civilian employee of the NOPD. He got shot, and the landlord is on suicide watch right now due to this traumatic instance that took place. It's just an example of how bad things are down here. And then, like I always bring up, you've got that the Newsbreak app where you can look at local news, and it's just chaos and pandemonium down here in the Big Easy. You literally can drive on the I-10 without worrying about somebody randomly shooting their pistol outside the window and getting hit by a stray bullet. Citizens enraged by the change in police were further outraged earlier this year when a constable in New Orleans ignored someone who reported a grape to him, which I just brought out earlier. This year, nearly 100 calls to report grape have been quickly downgraded, according to the Times-Picayune. Survivors are left waiting for police for hours, like that person of that acquaintance that I knew that waited for 3 hours after she got graped, and they often leave before the police arrive. And the brother Bakar Amath just did a video talking about how in times of war and instances of societal collapse, one of the main things that takes place is women getting raped out here. And he was bringing out some very heavy information in that article, in some of the articles in the video he did, just showing instances of grapes during wartime and collapses of society. Soldiers were raping women. They were raping young women, old women. Women were getting gang raped. They were getting beat up, put to death, all that. And since we're coming into the times of Jacob's trouble, a time that is going to be like any other time in human history, hey, this is going to be taken to a whole nother level. And again, since a lot of you Babylonian women, you Western-minded women, especially you women of the tribes that have been proud and arrogant, careless and at ease out here, treating the men you've dealt with like complete shit, you won't have anybody to protect you in that day. Hey, a lot of those men you screwed over are going to come after you in that day to get their hands on you, to get their licks back. Long wait times, along with NOPD reports filled as gone on arrival, have officials like Council Member Helena Moreno concerned about the chance that these crimes may never be investigated, and a lot of them won't be, as well as worried about the emotional toll the delay has on grape victims, according to WWL-TV. Again, tremble ye women that are at ease, be troubled, ye careless ones, strip you and make you bare, and gird sackcloth upon your loins, being in a state of mourning, in a state of duress, due to going through instances like grape or any other violent crimes that may come your way, and there's no restitution for it. You can't go to anybody for help because there just is nobody for help. And some of the people you do go for help to, the authorities end up graping you, which were some of the instances that brother brought out in his video. How soldiers would ravish women, and then the women would go and speak to their superior officers, and guess what happened? The superior officers clapped them cheeks too. Additionally, the NOPD said that 73,000 DNA samples, many of which are grape kits, sit backlogged in the Louisiana State Police Crime Lab. Because of these setbacks, many survivors who report sexual assault are left with uninvestigated and unsolved crimes. The former Loyola student, whose name is being withheld to respect her privacy, said she is outraged by the NOPD's decision to downgrade rape and that she believes it demonstrates that the department does not care about survivors. They just don't have the manpower to deal with the situation. Let me see. It shows a lack of oh, and also when you've got information like this that's publicly available, these articles, and the police, which they have done on the news down here, come out and say, look, we really aren't able to control the situation with crimes out here. What's that going to do to these criminals out here, these predators, these rapists, and all that watch the news and see that, hey, if we commit these crimes, there's really going to be no repercussions about it. They're going to get bold and really go out and yoke shit up. It shows a lack of respect for the thousands of people whose grape test kits have been backlogged, she said. It shows that the people who are sworn to serve and protect aren't going to protect you in possibly the scariest and most vulnerable moment of your life. The Loyola alumnus said her grape kit is yet to be tested 3 years later, though she said the NOPD was first very responsive, taking in her evidence as well as all the details of her case. I understand that with over 300,000 people living in the metro area alone, and not remotely enough police to handle that amount of people in the first place, that it could take some time, she said. And 3 years later, she more or less shouldn't hold her breath out. However, she claimed that 2 weeks after her incident, she called and found out that her grape kit had not been tested yet. She added that every few weeks she would call to get an update, but after 2 months, the NOPD stopped answering her calls. She felt that her case had been pushed to the back burner. Another example, the vintage failing, the fruitful vine withering up. My sexual assault was never solved, and my rapist is still out and about, probably living as if nothing had ever happened, she said. And who knows, he may yoke something else up out here. And best believe, as society collapses, he is going to yoke something up out here again. As a result of her interactions with the NOPD, the former Loyola student said she feels unsafe in New Orleans and is unsure who to turn to in an emergency. Hey, there's going to be nobody to turn to. And like I've been saying, with you women just treating men like oafs and fools and playthings out here, in that day when you're going to need a man to help you, there's going to be nobody there, because the situation's going to be bad for everybody out here, men and women, children, young and old. So when there's food shortages, martial law, soldiers patrolling the streets, just pandemonium and chaos, men are going to be much more concerned with saving their own ass than some woman that screwed them over in the past, especially some woman that treated them like shit in the past. The NOPD should have never announced that they were not going to move forward with grape investigations anymore, she said. That gave a green light to all predators, that they can do whatever they want to, and there will be little repercussions and nobody to answer for their crimes. Last July, a deputy constable for the New Orleans City Court resigned after being accused of failing to intervene when a witness informed him of a woman who was being raped, according to a statement from the constable of the Second City Court, Edwin Shorty. According to the investigation, the deputy was on a private security detail in the French Quarter when he was approached. After staying in his vehicle for several minutes, the deputy then walked away from the area. The deputy provided no explanation for his conduct, according to Shorty. The deputy's story infuriated me, but it was not surprising due to the inaction of the NOPD in my case, the former Loyola student said. I could not imagine being the witness, having seen such a horrific act take place and going to the person who is supposed to serve and protect and being ignored. Egregious failure. Ray Taylor, chair of Loyola's Criminology and Justice Department, said she feels that the deputy's actions that night violated the police officer's standard of conduct. The officer who failed to respond committed egregious failure to protect, which is central to his work in law enforcement, regardless of whether he was in an off-duty enforcement role on that night, Taylor said. Taylor is a member of Crime Survivors NOLA, a group that reports on crime statistics, police issues, and shares resources for survivors in New Orleans. On their Instagram, Crime Survivors posted a report by the Sexual Violence Response Advisory Committee that stated that NOPD Sex Crimes Unit cleared only 5% of sexual assault cases in 2021. Imagine what it's like to survive sexual violence, call police to report it, often placing your own safety at risk, talk about it with strangers, endure a forensic exam, and then realize there's a 90% chance your case will never be solved, the Crime Survivors Instagram post said. Taylor added that reducing crime and successfully meeting the needs of crime survivors requires a systems approach, where each system performs with integrity. With so many people within the police department, so much conflict within and across the various agencies, and with individuals elected to office, we see that the effect of this is skyrocketing crime and abysmal responses to crime and crime survivors, Taylor said. So with this article, but as we can clearly see, society just continues to collapse, and that vintage, that fruitful vine for you women, continues to collapse, and more instances like this, among other violent crimes towards women, is going to take place. And the Most High is really putting a cold, just heartless spirit on people out here, especially men. And once they get the chance to really go buck wild, that's exactly what they're going to do. Let's go to Matthew chapter 24, verse 12. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Let's go to that word iniquity in the Strongs, which is G 458. Anomia, the condition of without law, because ignorant of it, because of violating it, contempt and violation of law, iniquity, wickedness. And this is ultimately talking about the world being without the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai in the scriptures, and the earth not being governed by it. But it can also be talking about how these laws of these different societies are being ignored and violated and held in contempt. Like I've been saying throughout the video, you've got a lot of police leaving forces and a lot of these different places planning on decriminalizing particular laws. And as we just saw in that article on Loyola, due to issues in the NOPD, grape has been downgraded to a, what was it? To non-emergencies. So because iniquity or lawlessness is abounding, the love of many is waxing cold. And again, the Most High is putting the spirit on a lot of men out here who have been rejected by women or just had a bad time with women. And to end that time, and even in these times leading up to it, to really go after you women and handle business with you. Just go to some of the comment sections or articles of these different so-called men's rights pages or MGTOW, Red Pill, whatever you want to call it. And you see a lot of men in there just saying, look, I want society to collapse and I want these women to suffer. So what do you think they're going to do when they get the chance to commit heinous acts without any repercussions? they're going to take full advantage of it. And a lot of this shit happens more often than you think. In my own personal life, I have instances of people that I know who have damn near had these things happen to them. There's one chick I knew back in college who she at the job she would work at, it was a late night job, and there was always a older guy that would come in and just stare at her on the job. It got so bad to the point to where security, whenever this guy would come in, would have to escort him off the premises. And she was so uneasy about this guy in this situation that she ended up getting a taser. And I'll never forget this. One morning, because her her boyfriend and another mutual friend of ours, they lived on the apartments on campus, and I lived on the apartments on campus as well. So we were constantly hanging out. And you know when people get a taser or something, it's people like to play with it like a toy because it's just something most people don't ever see, like a gun. So that morning, there were a few other friends over, and she was showing around the taser, and everybody was playing with it, turning it on, making it go buzz. And I remember telling her, "Look, you got this situation going on, and I know we hope nothing bad happens, but look, you got to be treating it seriously. You can't just be at ease or careless out here. Keep that thing on a charger to make sure it's ready to go." And she put the thing on the charger, and then later on she went to work. And I had work too that night, so I got home late, and when I had got back, I had stopped by their apartment, and there were a bunch of people over there consoling her, and it come to find out that when she was leaving work that night, that dude was waiting for her in the parking lot and decided to make his move. He grabbed her and threw her on the ground, and if she didn't have that taser and stunned him, hey, well, we're not going to say who knows what would have happened. We know exactly what would have happened. Hey, it just goes to show you women just can't be careless or at ease out here. And this was a long time ago, and how much more now with just this society becoming much more lawless out here and people being in much more of a colder spirit. And then here's another example. At the time, I was dating a Israelite woman. She was Eve or Judah. And one day she was wearing a kind of short dress, and it was windy outside, so the wind would kind of blow the dress up. And I told her, because I was going to meet the bros later on that day, so I told her when I left by her place, look, you probably don't want to wear that skirt because just look at the wind that's blowing it up. And she was like, ah ha ha, nothing's gonna happen. So when I'm going to meet my bros, I get a call on the phone from her. She's all in distress and everything, saying that she was walking on St. Charles, which has a streetcar track, and she says some old guy, some old Jake, rode up to her on a bike with his rod out in his hand. And why do you think he specifically rode up to her with his rod out in his hand? Because she was wearing that dress, and the wind was blowing up, and he was getting hot under the collar, so to speak. And I remember the first thing I told her was like, look, I told you not to wear that dress. And she got all up in arms about it, saying I was victim blaming and all that. But you saw what happened, what the result was of you being careless and at ease. And a lot of you women are like that. You go out on the weekends, you drink, you do drugs, you just think everything's going to be a grand old time, dress however you want. And then when something happens, like what happened to this Loyola chick at that Halloween party, or you pass out and wake up feeling violated, hey, you got nobody to blame but yourself. You put yourself in that situation. And no, I'm not downgrading the fact that that was a horrific thing that happened to you. But look, you gotta take accountability for your actions, as well as men gotta take accountability for their actions. If I were to wear a nice pair of clothes and walk through a bad neighborhood with money sticking out of my pockets, if something bad happens to me, I should have known better and expected something bad to happen to me. So I'm not downgrading the severity of these crimes that happen, but look, people got to start taking accountability out here and stop being careless and at ease, because we live in this artificial society where everything's so-called peaches and cream. You can call 911. You just got Captain Save-A-Hose and whatever out here to come to your aid. But as society continues to collapse and these amenities aren't here, reality is going to set in, and you're going to see just how bad things can get out here and what carelessness and ignorance can get you. But back to this situation with this chick I was dealing with. She got mad at me, and she ran a pro nigger, pro black podcast on social media, and she ended up talking about this instance, and said that me, without mentioning my name, and also her mother, who she called her mother and told her what happened, and her mother told her the exact same thing I told her. She said both of us weren't supportive of what happened to her, and that we were a victim blaming her. Just complete madness, not taking accountability, and that's just an offshoot of you women being careless and at ease out here. And another thing she told me was that this instance happened in broad daylight. And if you know anything about New Orleans and St. Charles and the streetcar track, that's a very public area. And she said when this old dude rolled up with his wiener in his hand, there were a bunch of white people standing around, and she screamed and was asking, "Is anybody gonna help me?" And nobody did a goddamn thing. And she was so surprised about it. And what I wanted to tell her was, look, you expect a bunch of crackers to care about niggas out here? I said something along those lines, but not as vulgar. But you just automatically expect people are just gonna help you out here, especially Edomites, your sworn enemy. But again, that's just another example showing the carelessness and how at ease you women are out here. And again, a lot of you women need to start taking accountability. You need to be dressing modestly, being observant of your surroundings, and just to cut it frank, a lot of you women just need to stay your ass at home. Go to work, go back to the house, because it's not good out here. And hey, not just for women, but hey, for a lot of men out here as well. I often joke with one of the elder bros down here that with all this crime taking place, the best thing you can do is just say go to work. You got to go get something at the store, and then immediately get your ass back to the house, because you could get carjacked, robbed, murdered, shot, stabbed up, or raped. But let's get back into these precepts, just showing the horrific times that we're coming into, especially for you women out here. This is Isaiah chapter 13. I'm going to start at verse 14. And we usually use this precept to deal with the race wars that are coming, and how everybody's going to go back to their own people during that time of Jacob's trouble and become real tribal, and anybody that's caught amongst another nation of people is going to get put through. You live in an Edomite neighborhood and have so-called good white friends that you go to the barbecue with, or their child's dance recital. In that day, they're going to be kicking in your door, taking your shit, putting you to death, and having their way with your loved ones. And vice versa. Edomites that live in gentrified neighborhoods where it may be one block of just Edomites living there, but the rest of the neighborhood is so-called Negroes or Judites. And now you got a lot of so-called Mexicans or Issacharites moving into neighborhoods and just the Northern Kingdom in general. In that day, and when you're caught slipping, they're going to kick in the door and do the exact same thing to you. But regardless, all over America during Babylon the Great, during Jacob's trouble, instances like this are going to take place, what we're about to read about. And it shall be as the chaste roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. Again, racial divisions are going to take place during Jacob's trouble. Nations rising against nations, as it says in Matthew chapter 24, and people are going to get tribal and looking after their own. Everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. If you're not found by your people in that day, you're going to get put to death. So a lot of you coons and bed wenches and bootlickers, Hey, you're gonna get your just desserts in that day. But besides that, hey, what we're about to read about is just gonna happen to everybody during Jacob's trouble that doesn't have that protective hedge of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai around them. Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Children are going to be getting put to death. Their houses shall be spoiled. People are going to be breaking into each other's houses and taking whatever they can due to food shortages out here. As it says in 2nd Esdras chapter 15, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the force of the sword, due to the lack of bread and for great tribulations. And what? And their wives ravished. Women getting raped out here. When people start breaking into each other's houses to get whatever they can get their hands on, hey, if there's a good looking woman in there, a good looking daughter, it doesn't matter. Hey, and with these freaks out here, uh, if you have a son or whatever, hey, in a lot of instances, they're going to get ravished and taped and raped. That's just the nastiness of the scriptures. That's the terrible times we are coming into. And hey, like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm specifically aiming this at you women of the tribes, you so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American women, who, and especially that so-called black woman. You done the most to make your man's life over in captivity in Babylon just utter hell. The Most High hasn't forgotten that these judgments are coming your way and are going to just fuck you up the most. This is Zechariah chapter 14. Let me see where I want to start. I'll start at verse 1. Behold, the day of Yahweh cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle. And Jerusalem is a people before it's a place. So this is talking about the nation of Israel. Wherever Israel dwells, these heathen nations are going to come against you during Jacob's trouble. And at the head of that list is going to be Esau, Edom, these so-called white people. A state of martial law with troops patrolling the streets. Just bands of racist Edomites roaming around, shooting at Jakes and attacking Jakes. Which down here during Katrina, we saw how these Edomites banded together and were hostile towards you Jakes. There was a particular ferry that went through, I can't exactly remember where it went through, but the neighborhood and area it went through to get to that ferry was a predominantly Edomite area. And those Edomites banded together, and if any Israelites, specifically Judites, tried to go through that area, they were getting shot at by Edomites. They're pretty much telling them, look nigga, this ain't the place to be. You want to come, you're going to face the consequences. They even interviewed some of those Edomites that were shooting at Jakes during that time, and they were laughing about it, comparing it to shooting birds in the sky. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, women getting raped. And half of the city shall go forth into captivity. A lot of you Jakes get rounded up and sent off to detention centers, FEMA camps, and tortured to death. And the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Point blank period. Another instance just showing the horrible things that are going to happen to you women out here, and just people in general out here. And when we read the scriptures and read information like this in these articles and just hear about all these horrific things taking place in the news, we can see why Isaiah chapter 4 verse 1 is going to take place. This is Isaiah chapter 4 verse 1. And in that day 7 women, and 7 just means completion, so it can mean any number of women. 1 woman, 2 women, literally 7 women, 20 women, shall take hold of one man, and not just any old man, a man of the Lord in that day, a prophet, out on the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles online. Chiefly GMS, Great Millstone, or the brothers coming in the spirit of GMS. Because hey, the doctrine that GMS and the brothers that come in the spirit of GMS preach is the the 144% truth of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. We give you the straight and skinny. We're not like a lot of these other camps out here that like to mingle the scriptures and say everything's going to be okay. But regardless, a man of the Lord is going to be that highly sought after man in that day, because they're going to have that protective hedge of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai over them and whoever they allow to cling unto them to get them through these calamities of Jacob's trouble. But again, and in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, a man of the Lord, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Hey, no more saying, oh, you got to buy me a drink if you want to talk to me. Oh, I expect you to take me on a date. You got to have the, what is it? The 666. You got to be 6 feet tall, have a 6-pack, and have 6 figures. All that shit's going to be out in the window in that day when it's just all hell and survival of the fittest out here. We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. Hey, let us be called under your name. And how does a woman take on the name of a man? Through marriage. And marriage, according to the scriptures, is sex. So, hey, women are just going to be coming and asking to have that reproach taken away from them, because they're going to be going through holy hell out here. Grapes, robberies, getting beat up, all manners of madness. But in that day, hey, a lot of you women are going to be turned down by the men of the Lord, because I believe the Most High is going to have women that specifically screwed over men of the Lord. They're going to come across them in that day just to see them, see their reproach, and see them get put to death. And the elder Yashawamba of the Dallas camp made a good point. How are we going to know if a woman is good or bad in that day? The Most High is going to give us some ability to be able to see like what you did in your past, whether you're worthy to be allowed to cling unto a man of the Lord or not. And in a lot of instances, we're going to see the dirty dealings of you women and just push you away, and you're just going to have to take that judgment, that death by pain, as it says in 2nd Esdras chapter 9. But let me see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, I'll get one more. This is Isaiah 32, verse 2. A man, and not just any man, shall be as an hiding place from the wind and a covert from the tempest. All these different judgments and calamities of Jacob's trouble taking place. A man of the Lord is going to be that protective hedge, as rivers of water in a dry place, and as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land. So, to you Israelite women out there, you so-called Negro, Latino, or Native American women that may come across this video, the thing you should be doing right now is getting right with your power, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Quit being a whore out here, dress modestly, and just keep your head down. If you got a man you're dealing with, be faithful to that man and do what you can to make his life easier in hell. And if you don't have a man, don't push it. As it says in the Apocrypha, don't force the course of the waters. Hey, if you're a woman of that elect number as well, hey, the Most High is going to protect you and send a man of the Lord your way to be your covering that day. But right now, hey, just do what you can to be modest and not be like these women of the world out here. Just do what you can to better yourself, just like the men in this truth are doing what they can to better themselves and get closer to their power, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. So that's it with this Shabbat lesson. And with this Shabbat lesson, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath, sisters, were edified. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shabbat Shalom.